The way we show up at work has changed over the years. With the onset of the global pandemic and other challenges that we continue to encounter, there is a necessity to approach our work from anywhere and at any time. GoTo is a company that believes in enabling people and businesses to seamlessly interact and exchange ideas and thoughts to make work better. Joining us in conversation today about GoTo and what it does and how it is keeping up with the emerging trends in the technology space is Madhusudan Krishnapuram, who is the Vice President and Managing Director at GoTo India. Hello Madhusudan, how are you doing today?
Doing very well, Vijayalakshmi. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So I'm here at GoTo's Bangalore office, and this is my first time here. The moment I entered, I was stunned by the visuals here. It's a beautiful office, and today is also Self-Care Friday, right?
That's correct.
It's an interesting concept, and I thought I should take a moment and appreciate that. And also, thank you so much for joining us today. So your company specializes in the remote desktop software space. So how did GoTo make its way to become one of the industry leaders?
Good question. First, let me start by saying we make IT easy. It's not just about remote desktop. It's about IT support, IT management, business communications, everything that you need from an IT perspective to make your business run seamlessly.
Correct.
The origin story for GoTo goes back to early 2000s with Log Me In, when we found a need, and constraint is the mother of innovation. And so we found a reason to sit at home, be able to monitor servers somewhere else and fix them instead of driving across town in Budapest. So today, especially after the pandemic, we discovered that we had the tools and technologies that could help our customers and help us deal with the rapidly changing and evolving world. Right. If you look at IT today, the IT administrator and the IT decision maker is faced with a complex problem. Multiple tools, multiple technologies, complexity, difficulty in decision making, and never sure of how the service is rendered to the end user, depending on where the person's at. And at GoTo, we decided that we should make it easy, pun intended. Right? So easy means easy for the end user, the person receiving the service, easy for the person administering the service, easy for the decision maker, easy for everyone involved. And we do that by having like a single pane of glass, and we have all our solutions in one package, whether it's IT support, IT management, webinars, meetings, business communications, phone calls, all in one place, dealt with one way, and doing one thing, which is to get the IT problem out of your way.
So moving on to the next question, right? Whether it's introducing new products or solutions into the market or working on the existing portfolio, right? So what are some capabilities and functionalities GoTo is working on currently?
Multiple things actually, and depending on the problem space you look at, I could probably name 10 different things, but let's just segment it into IT support and management and universal communications and collaborations, or UCC as we call it. In the IT support space, for example, we are dealing with many different issues today that were probably not as relevant 3 years ago.
Right.
We had the distributed workforce that went out from the offices. Now we have people coming back into the office, but flexibility is here to stay.
Yes.
So we have our IT administrators finding the need to manage people that are sometimes in the office, sometimes out. And you take it one step further, India is a big IT hub. We have our partners that provide customer service and IT support to their customers.
Right.
And so they act like a service provider in that context. And they need to adapt to what their end customers are facing, as well as deal with their own workforce, which is kind of distributed. And so we're developing problems to make their life easier and more efficient. And in this place, also deal with the new constraints that security imposes.
Right.
So we don't know where people are, so we don't know if the person that says he's X or Y is actually X or Y.
Right.
And we don't know if the network can be trusted. How do you deal with the situation where security is paramount, as we all know, and make it so that security doesn't fight with ease of use and security doesn't incorporate complexity. That's one aspect of it.
Right.
The second part that I can talk about, which I think is probably what everyone's talking about these days, is generative AI.
Of course, I do have questions on that, so
Okay, and
we'll
so
park
we'll
that
get to
thought.
that.
Yes.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So,
So these are the functionalities and capabilities that GoTo is working on. Is there anything else that you would like to add to that question, apart from the generative AI aspect?
we focus on three things,
Correct.
actually. One, kind of looking at it in a macro view, because we have like 1 million customers, we kind of get inputs and insights from them all the time, and we project and predict what the trends might be, and how do we kind of either drive it or adapt to it.
Absolutely.
The second is talking to our customers, figuring out what are the specific pain points and problems that you have
Right.
that we can help you with.
Yeah.
And the third is usually it's a conversation. And so in our conversation with our partners, with our customers, we sometimes come upon ideas that we hadn't thought about ourselves,
Right.
and then work as their advisor and partner, and they work as our advisor and partner
Yes.
in trying to figure out how to move forward. So that's kind of the broad spectrum of what we do.
So moving on to the next question, let's talk about the competition that GoTo faces, right? So I'm pretty sure you have peers that are working on similar technologies or providing similar solutions. So where do you think does GoTo have a competitive advantage? Like how are you better than, the other people in the similar space?
And I'll break it up again into two segments.
Right.
There is GoTo working directly with its end customers,
Yes.
and there's GoTo working with its partners that then provide solutions to its end customers. The partner ecosystem in India actually is extremely strong. We kind of work with a lot of partners here. They love our solution, and we've been at it for a while. Rescue, for example, is a great tool that a lot of our partners use in providing IT support. What we do from an end customer perspective is like what I said before, try to simplify the problem for them. And you find that at sufficient size and scale, companies can afford and actually invest in relatively expensive solutions that they can then deploy to solve their needs. But for the small and medium businesses, they have a problem. They neither have the bank balance, if you will, nor the time or the resources to investigate, stay on top of, and deploy and manage all these tools.
Right.
And yet they cannot compromise on privacy, they cannot compromise on security, they cannot compromise on compliance. And so if they go in the market looking for something that gives them all of these things, they'll find tools for every solution.
Correct.
Absolutely. But then they're dealing with 3-4 different tools, complexity,
Of course.
the usual problems apply. And so that's where I think GoTo comes in and says, don't worry, come to us, one-stop shop, we'll solve your problem for you.
Right.
And at scale of size and scale of complexity. So that's
Right.
one aspect of how we differentiate ourselves. In the partner ecosystem, of course, since we've been at it for a while, we have, I'd like to say, done two things right.
Right.
One, we've kind of gone hybrid native. You hear of cloud native solutions, built for the cloud and being able to like run natively in the cloud. We've built our solutions for the remote and the hybrid workforce. So we make it more equitable for the receiver of the service, no matter where the person is, to get the same kind of service and be a first-class citizen, versus if you are in an office somewhere. And that's
Right.
something that either you build it up or you retrofit somehow. So there are lots of small things that go to make that happen.
So talking about your competition, right? So what are some areas do you think they need to catch up on? Like, they need to fill those gaps. What are those pain points, so to speak, according to you?
That's a tricky one because I think I would then have to name competition and say this person has X, this person has
But you
Y.
can talk about the
But
general
generally
stuff that they need to improve on.
Right.
What are they working on? Yeah.
So, and I think there's a lot of give and take, and that's what makes it interesting.
Right.
So quite often the people that we see as competition in a particular customer in a particular segment are actually people that we integrate within another segment because
Right.
they've done some stuff well. And so do we run into Microsoft? Yes. Do we partner with Microsoft? Yes. Do we integrate with Microsoft? Yes. So it's co-opetition, to use an old word.
Yeah.
So we do that. I think there are places, broadly speaking, that we have an advantage in, and I prefer to keep it and keep the conversation kind of focused on us
Of course.
rather than on the competition, because I'm sure they will catch up and they're my friends outside in the industry as well, right? So
Right.
The things that we were able to take advantage of and focus on are customer centricity, ease of use, and the art of managing complexity, if you will. So
Right.
how do you design and roll out policies that are customized, specific to a particular geography, for example, without overwhelming the administrator or the end user with, here's the 10 things you need to configure in order to make this work.
Right.
And for the end user, how can I just click a button, do something, and get what I need to get done? So
Correct.
focus on getting the jobs done in this environment is something that I think we have an inherent advantage in.
So how is AI disrupting a business like GoTos?
AI is actually helping us a lot,
Right.
rather than disrupting us. And it's great that ChatGPT and the large language models that have come to the fore have made this like a byword that everyone understands, and it's hard to keep up with everything that comes out these days.
Yeah.
The pace of innovation is so rapid.
Exactly.
But AI has been around for a while, and we've been using AI and ML for a long time. So machine learning is something that we've used in the context of voice to text transcription, translations, virtual backgrounds, where we use segmentation and make sure that we can have like a nice little thing instead of something disturbing in our background.
Yeah.
And lots of other internal use cases where we look at all the data that we have and figure out what this customer journey is looking like.
Right.
In addition, I mean, we've kind of looked at large language models in the past as well because we had these ideas, but it's at scale now, and it's awesome that it's at scale.
Right.
We've used ChatGPT and integrated its conversational AI capabilities in the field of customer engagement.
Right.
So GoTo provides products to customers who then use the product to interact with their customers.
Right.
And we use it to make those interactions, augment those interactions to make it more efficient, more effective, and deliver the results and satisfaction that the end users desire, either ours or our customers' end users.
Correct.
On the support and IT management side, we actually have a beta program going out with our new product called GoTo Resolve,
Right.
where we've used these capabilities for automation.
Right.
So run-of-the-mill scripts that people would have to write can simply be generated and run on a fleet of machines. And so we've been at it for a while. The thing that's interesting is we have to be using this and advancing this in a responsible manner. So in cognizance with and in compliance of security, privacy, and compliance laws that
Absolutely.
are different by region and evolving by the hour.
So there is an uptake for these tools in multiple industries, right? And like you mentioned, you're also like trying to implement ChatGPT, GPT-4 and other LLM tools like that into your system. So what do you think is going to be the future of implementing such technologies? Because it is growing at such a rapid pace, right? So how will you keep up with the evolution of something like that and simultaneously incorporate it into your business and make sure everything is going on seamlessly?
Yeah, and that's actually not unique to this problem.
Correct.
I think that you take any big technology shift in the past, we have the same set of challenges that apply. When we had the 1001 JavaScript libraries that were coming out, people were like, how can I keep track of all of this? And tomorrow there's a better one, day after tomorrow there's a third one. I think the focus always goes back to what is the problem that we're trying to solve.
Correct.
And we really focus on what jobs for our customer are we trying to solve, and how can AI be in service of something like that. Within that space, we have multiple constraints.
Yes.
We have people with weird network connectivities. They can drop, they can come back. Power in some phones are more than power in some old laptops, and so
Correct.
we need to deal with form factors, we need to deal with resource utilization, etc. And all of these things kind of feed back into what we do and how we fashion it. It's great that we actually have models that are out there, like Facebook, Meta release Segment Anything, which is wonderful for any kind of stuff that we otherwise have to invent ourselves. with all these large language models that we have, and with the evolution of stable diffusion, mid-journey, all of those things. There's plenty out there and plenty of innovation in the marketplace, and I think that that's a good thing. We look at the market and learn from them as well. I think the power of open source, the power of the startup ecosystem, and the power of global innovation in this case, because it's not restricted to one region, is immense. We'll incorporate some of that.
Right. So apart from the very obvious developments that we are seeing in the AI space and how GoTo is keeping up with it, how are you as a company also trying to keep up with the other tech trends and whatever is happening in your industry specifically?
We actually start with one of our core values, and that's probably the best place to start. We have a culture of learning in the company. One of our core values is keep growing. From the top down, our CEO can spend an hour a week to learn something new, then everyone else can do it too.
Right.
And so the only way to keep up with what's happening is to invest in learning. And we do that holistically across the board. We also have events to promote it, like hackathons. We have places where people can go off for some time, do something, come back and say, hey, here's something cool, can we productize it? And a lot of our innovations are actually a consequence of engineers picking up something new, finding a different lens through which to look at a problem and solve it. And that's how we kind of incorporate things into our roadmap and come up with these groundbreaking, including the zero trust network access stuff that I talked about earlier.
Right.
That's how that came about. Also, I think this is part of the job description for all of us as engineers, as business people, as managers. I think you have to keep up with what's going on and invest in learning something new. Otherwise, you're dated and there's no chance for success in the industry. So,
absolutely.
And so it comes as second nature to us to be abreast of things, to solve the problems that we think need solving.
Right. Now moving on to the customer side of things, right? So I'm pretty sure GoTo's customers are facing certain challenges which are specific to this kind of an industry. So how is GoTo overcoming these challenges, and what are the conversations that you're having with your customers to be able to address these challenges?
Yeah, so two things. One, I'm glad you said conversation,
Yes.
because I think that's exactly what it is, a conversation where we both kind of listen to each other, give and take. Apart from that, we typically have conversations on three broad areas, so to speak. And we do that so as to get a 360 view of the customer, right? So we have conversations within our company about the customer. So what are different departments in the company hearing from this customer? And care might hear a different thing from sales, might hear a different thing from product management and engineering, because they might be talking to different people, but we coalesce all of that and we discover, oh, this is really what the thing is that the customer is talking about.
Right.
So broadly speaking, there's the commercial aspect of it that we have to talk to a customer about, because the economic situation, as you pointed out, is up and down, right? Happy today, sad tomorrow, God knows what.
Yeah.
And so we have to be flexible in terms of their subscriptions, their pricing models, their demands. They may have a surge today, a dip tomorrow, and a spike day after. We have to accommodate that. And we can't be rigid and say, this is exactly how we dictate and do it, and therefore we'll be okay. And that takes care of the business stakeholder, so to speak, and make sure that we design things that make it easy for them to do business with us. And that's a very important consideration for a lot of our customers.
Right.
The second is what I call implementation conversations. Different customers have different myriad environments, right? And it's never, we don't claim to know it all, and we think we know it all, and then the next one that comes along completely breaks those assumptions. And so there can be different integrations, different workflows, different ecosystems that we deal with. And so what we end up doing is working with the customer to figure out how we can do those integrations, how we can make it as non-disruptive as possible and yet as quick as possible to deploy.
Right.
We have out-of-the-box integrations with Salesforce, Microsoft Dynamics 365, all the things that you would expect, but still there's integrations and there's implementation of those things that might change. And so those conversations are very critical for us.
Right.
And the third is more of a kind of a partner/advisory type of conversation where we take what we know and have and insights at a macro scale. We take the IT segment zeitgeist, if you will, talk to the customer and the partner and say, here's what we think, here's what we see, here are the trends that are coming, what do you think?
Right.
And they'll come back with very interesting observations. One of them very recently talked about how he was able to roll out policies in various parts of the world, but he was stuck in France. Why? Because there's a trade union strike going on there with regard to pension raises. And they're opposing how this implementation of this particular policy, which has no relation to what they're dealing with, might somehow be viewed as favoring the administration. And so
Right.
these are geopolitical things that we could not have fathomed
Right.
that might end up influencing what we do and how we need to deal with something like this.
Right.
So that's kind of one example of that.
Right. Now, moving on to the remote monitoring and management side of things. So, how is GoTo as a solutions provider helping IT professionals?
First of all, and I'm not bragging when I say this, I think anyone that's been in remote monitoring and management has touched a GoTo product, right? So we've been around for 20 plus years, 23 years at least now, and we've had over 1 billion support sessions.
Subtle flex there, yeah.
Sorry,
That's okay.
you got to give me that. So that's
Yeah.
So, so I think there are two things that we can rely on. I think the wisdom of experience. We've dealt with many different types of systems, many different constraints and configurations back when it was very nascent
Right.
to now. And the fact that we still are the market leader in this space means we have something that is providing a real value proposition.
Right.
And so the three things that we can count on there are reliability. It just works, right? So I think that you never think twice about it, about security and about compliance. The
Right.
big problem that people have is, oh my God, I'm letting that person come into my machine. What happens to my data, et cetera, et cetera. And to do that, they need to trust us to make sure that that is not going to happen with us.
Right.
And so I think those things are moats, if you will, that are hard to overcome. There can be 100 different people that can do the same thing very easily. But to kind of build this credibility and this trust takes time.
Right.
And we bank on that.
So, follow up to the previous question that I asked, you had stated security, right? So, how do you address the security issues that pop up in such a setup? And also, is it safe to say that GoTo is unlocking, a new level of misuse prevention and security for IT professionals and customers?
So let me rephrase that question by answering it in two parts.
Sure.
One, what is the inherent risk of security that IT professionals face today in this dispersed workforce?
Right.
And two, how is GoTo dealing with these security issues?
Right.
Because I think these security issues are not unique to GoTo, and I don't think that we're the only ones doing something about it. I mean, as an industry, and I'm happy to say this, everyone, all my competitors, all my partners, everyone's stepping up their security game because security is table stakes now.
Correct.
Right? And so, and as an ecosystem, we need to do that because otherwise the bad guy evolves and wins. And the bad person is always one step ahead and evolving, so it's a constant race.
Right.
So the security issues these days, surprisingly, still revolve around fairly basic attacks, like phishing, password, impersonation, things like that. Even though there are sophisticated attacks, some of the basic ones kind of constitute a big bulk of what might constitute incidents, if you will, from a security perspective.
Right.
And so GoTo and companies of our ilk all provide certain basic things to help prevent something like this from happening. We integrate with single sign-on systems so that you can't have a separate username password thing. And so if a company decides that my authentication master, my Active Directory is the place where I impose security constraints, that should be applicable across the board.
Right.
We have risk-based authentication so that we know if it's anomalous, we ask for an extra level of security, so we level up our security posture, so to speak.
Right.
We talked about verifying the principal before granting access, no matter where they come from. Just because you can browse my Confluence doesn't mean that you can administer my production systems, for example, even though you're authenticated, so we have to re-verify those types of
Correct.
things. So those are things that we do as a matter of course, and everyone else needs to do that. And this is a game that needs to be played and be good at constantly in order to evolve. We have a security team at
Right.
GoTo. We have our usual red, black, and purple hacker teams so that they keep track of how we are from a security posture as a product, as a company, as an infrastructure. And we have a security incident response team that provides a swift and coordinated response to potential threats. These are not people that wake up in the event of an actual threat and say, oh, this is a threat, now I'll respond. No.
They are
90%
prepared for it.
They're prepared for it, and we're perfectly fine if a false alarm comes. We love false alarms, actually.
Right.
Because we just dismiss it. Done. Good, but I'm glad you're on it.
So troubles are invited, is what you're trying to say. Not all the time.
Hints of troubles are invited.
Correct. That's the
Actual
right way to
trouble
put
is
it.
prevented.
That's the
That's
right
the
way to put it, yeah. So we have reached the end of the interview. Before we wrap up, is there something that you would like to share with the viewers of Analytics India magazine, or even the general public for that matter?
First of all, thank you for this conversation. It was wonderful to be able to share my insights and to talk about not just GoTo, but about the industry as a whole. To everyone that's out there, these are exciting times. I
They are.
think the power of innovation is in all our hands, and I'd love for innovation to come from everywhere and make us all better. That's the best I can hope for.